99% of poker players do not understand these 4 mistakes that are losing them money. These are the moves that separate the winners from the losers, and almost nobody uses them correctly. Over my 6-year poker career, I have used each of them to stay profitable every year. So in this video, I am going to show all of them using live hand examples. The first mistake is going to involve a situation all players get into and they approach it very poorly. 99% of poker players are playing multi-way pots incorrectly. There are many factors that affect the way we should approach a multi-way pot, including our position, our opponent's positions, amount of players in the pot, and the specific board run out. The first hand to show how to play these pots correctly is going to be when I get dealt 5-4 suited in hijack position at a 5-10 game with a $20 straddle on. This is a mix open here, and this time I will open to $50. Cutoff puts in the call. It folds to big blind, and they will call as well. We are three-handed going to a flop of ace king 4, 2 diamonds. Big blind is going to check. I currently have bottom pair with a 5 high flush draw to go along with it. This is a spot I see plenty of players find continuation bets, not even thinking about playing a check. We do not always want to bet, even as the pre-flop aggressor. Multi-way pots present perfect opportunities to find more passive and defensive plays out of position. I check my option. Cutoff has a stack of $550, so they did start the hand very short. They decide to stab here in position for $40, a little less than 25% of the pot. Big blind folds, and now the decision is on me. There is something super important to note about multi-way pots. The person last to act tends to overstab and bet since they have position. They view checks as a sign of weakness, and a lot of people have this problem. With them being short though, do you think they would bet such a small amount with a small starting stack with a strong ace? The answer is no. My plan all along was to go from defense to offense immediately if I faced a bet. I am going to check raise, and it will be a 5x size all the way up to $200. This sizing will fold out majority of the stabs by my opponent. Also, even the most beginner player here may be scared with a super weak ace and may not want to continue. Even if they did, we have such a large amount of equity, our hand just wants to check raise to this size to maximize EV. They do go into the tank for about 20 seconds. Finally, they do find a fold and we take down the pot. Having check raises in your range is super important for navigating spots multi-way. If you are struggling with multi-way pots, one of the most complicated spots to play in poker, I have something for you that is easy. Scan this QR code to check out my free weekly newsletter. I provide a vast amount of knowledge for any player looking to improve their game. Scan or click the link in the pinned comment to join. This time we would get dealt pocket aces in under the gun position in a 5-10 game. I open to $30, and opponents in hijack and cutoff are both going to call, and everyone else folds, giving us another multi-way pot. We go 3 ways to a flop of Jack 7-9, 2 clubs. This is a different kind of multi-way pot for many reasons. First, we are out of position to both opponents instead of just one. Because of this, we have to proceed with even more caution than in the previous hand. These are 2 flats versus an under the gun open, and we must respect their range here because it should be very tight majority of the times. Second, this is an extremely wet board. There are many draws and also some made hands that destroy aces. My hand was very strong pre-flop, but currently it does not want to put in a lot of money itself. It is time once again to play defense. So I start out with a check. Hijack checks as well. Cutoff, however, is going to find a stab in position, and they bet $50 for about 50% of the pot. In this spot, our opponent can still find some random stabs, but their range suggests they will mostly have strong hands. I must respect their range, so there is no reason to check raise aces here. This is not the time at all to play for stacks and cry later when your aces get cracked. I just put in a call. Hijack is going to fold. We are now heads up going to the turn, and it comes the 9 of spades. I am no longer the aggressor in this pot, so I will check. Villain is going to size up this time, betting $220, a slight overbet, but we will just consider it a pot size bet since there was $205 in the pot. Aces is beginning to become weaker here, but it is still a strong enough hand to continue with. If you start folding here, then you are just folding too much. I put in a call. We go to the river and it gets a bit more interesting, bringing in the seven of hearts. I check again. Preferably, I would want my opponent to check back here on this run out, but I also have to prepare for what I am going to do if they decide to bet. The options will be call or fold. Villain places a bet of $400, which is a little over a 60% wager. Now we have a decision to make. I unfortunately have the ace of clubs in my hand, which is bad with there being clubs on the flop. Range-wise, my opponent is no longer betting a jack and most certainly will not have a 7. Double barreling a 7 here does not make any sense. At this point, it is either a 9 for a full house, some sort of random 10x such as king 10 or queen 10, some random 8x such as 8-6 suited, or the most unlikely, a flush draw that missed. This bet by them is extremely thin when you think about it, and they did size down. Ultimately, with this full breakdown, aces will be strong enough to call versus this line. I do call, and they turn over 8-5 of diamonds. They turned a double gutter into a triple barrel bluff. This is why we need to have very strong hands in our check-in range to be able to properly defend versus aggression in multi-way pots out of position. Now I will get dealt ace-10 offsuit in under the gun +1 position, playing 5-10 with a $20 straddle on. I open to $50 and villains in hijack and cutoff are going to come along with the call. Everyone else folds. We are three-handed again, going to a flop of 10-9 deuce rainbow. We are out of position to 2 players again, but this time the board is a dry one. We have top pair, top kicker. Checking here is fine, but this time I do elect to play a bit of offense. As the pre-flop aggressor on this board, I will go for the continuation bet for $80. Villain and hijack puts in the call, and cutoff is going to be laying it down. We go to the turn and it comes to 3 of clubs. Ace-10 is still an extremely strong hand here so far. The turn does bring in the backdoor flush draw, so I will size up here, placing a wager of $220. Villain puts in the call. We go to the river and it comes the 6 of hearts. The 6 does complete some hands, but there are some draws that may have missed too, such as Queen Jack and maybe even King Jack if my opponent loves to chase. Of course, they would always continue with King Jack of clubs. Because of all these reasons, I decide to go for a check call line rather than placing a bet myself. I check and villain bets $330, which is less than half of the pot, so it is an easy call for me. They show Queen 10 of clubs and we take down the pot. In this exact scenario, Queen 10 would have called river if I bet myself, but remember, we do not make decisions based on one hand in our opponent's range. The focus must always be all possible hands in their range. The second mistake is going to be one I see all the time at all stakes and levels of poker. Poker players do not know how to fold at the right time. It is an extremely difficult skill to master, especially in tough situations, such as this one where I am dealt pocket tens and under the gun +1 position. It starts off weird already with under the gun opening to $40, a 4x open since there is no straddle on. I decide to go for the 3-bet and raise it up to $120. It folds around to small blind and they put in a code 4-bet, making it $250 to go. Under the gun folds, and at this point I am up against a very strong range. It is only 2x my 3-bet though, and we are playing almost 150 big blinds effective in position, so I will be putting in the call. We go heads up to a flop of 8-7-3, 2 hearts. Good flop having an overpair to the board and some backdoor flush and straight draw potential. Villain puts out a bet of $150, a little less than 25% of the pot. I cannot go anywhere yet. I call. We go to the turn and it comes the 9 of spades. Extremely good turn as I pick up an open-ended straight draw. My opponent finds the double barrel and makes it $330 to go. I just cannot fold pocket tens here. I put in the call. We go to the river and it comes the 2 of diamonds. My opponent puts me all in for $830. Now I go into the tank. As I said before to start this hand, villain's range is extremely strong. Think about it. Under the gun open 4x and I 3-bet versus under the gun's massive open, so this makes my range super strong against theirs. Then somehow small blind finds a 4-bet against 2 super strong ranges. After we go post flop, they manage to triple barrel off with ease. Yes, their size on the river is a little more than 50% of the pot, but this does not mean I have to call. Think about it. What do we beat here? My opponent would somehow have to find a bluff with ace king because that is about the only hand I win against in this configuration. They still have pocket aces, kings, and sometimes queens. I personally do not believe they even have ace queen suited here often enough because of how tight players are with 4-betting. Yes, I committed a lot of money to this pot, but that does not mean I am committed and forced to call on the river. Never have this perspective of forcing a call due to these reasons. You can always find the fold, and I will do just that with my pocket tens with no regrets. If it is very hard to find tough folds like I do, something that is a lot easier is scanning the QR code that just popped up to join my free newsletter. I have received a lot of positive feedback, and poker players of all skill levels have been learning a lot. You can also join by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Different situation and position, I would be on the button with Queen Jack offsuit. The blinds are 2-5 this time. Hijack is going to limp, and cutoff is going to raise it up to $15. Hijack has been limping a lot, so there is a high percentage chance of making it to the flop in position with my holding. I call, and it folds back around to Hijack, who is going to come along as well. Lessons are overlapping here with this being a multi-way pot, but finding folds is still going to be the main focus. There is 3 of us headed to a flop of Queen 6 deuce rainbow. Hijack, the limper and not the person who raised, is going to randomly donk bet for $25, about 50% of the pot. Cut off folds, which is great as I now get to be heads up. I put in a call. We go to the turn and it comes the 7 of spades. Villain continues to fire out with a bet of $65. At this point, this is getting a bit alarming, but with top pair decent kicker, I am going to continue. Also, the 7 of spades should not have changed much, so I call again. We go to the river and it comes the 6 of spades. The backdoor flush draw has now completed on the river and the board paired. Even with all of this, Villain is finding a triple barrel donk and bets again for $175, a 75% pot bet roughly. Top pair decent kicker became worse and worse as the hand went on. My opponent is showing a massive amount of aggression even on this run out. You cannot be attached to top pair when someone is firing bets into you. So for all of these reasons, I would gladly fold my hand knowing that I have much better hands to call with in this spot. Try your best to never be attached to your hand and understand you can always fold and pick a better time to put your money in. The third mistake separates the elite from the average poker players. If you happen to not 3-bet enough, doing this is going to be even more difficult. 99% of poker players are not 4-bet bluffing enough. I will give some reasons why and how we should approach 4-betting. For this hand, I am dealt King 10 suited in cutoff position. It is 5-10 with a $20 straddle on, and I open to $50. Villain on button is going to 3-bet to $150. It folds back around to me, and now it's time to think about this spot. From cutoff, I am going to be opening a decent amount of hands, aka my range is a bit wide. By not being up against too tight of a range compared to early position opening, an okay player will find a lot of 3-bets in this configuration. I will have a bunch of hands I open fold and some hands I defend that unfortunately miss the flop. Calling with King 10 suited is perfectly fine, by the way, as it is a high equity hand, but sometimes we can mix it up. These are one of the hands and configurations you should be finding some 4-bet bluffs in. I am going to 4-bet, making it $410 to go. If my opponent goes all in, I fold, of course. However, my opponent appears to not have a strong enough hand to defend, or they believe I just have aces or kings, so they will be folding. I managed to pick up a total of $185 by finding this bluff. It feels uncomfortable at first, but trust me, if you want to become a great poker player, you need to start adding 4-bet bluffs to your range. Next hand, I am dealt King 5 suited, and we are going to have some blind versus blind action. It folds to me, and I raise it up to $15. Villain in big blind, who I have tagged as a very aggressive player, is going to 3-bet to $50. I have them labeled this way because in the span of only a couple of hands, They have found 3-bets almost every time. The funny thing is villain has never went to showdown and it ended up being aces, kings, or other premium holdings. Because of these reasons and seeing my opponent be loose 3-betting in even tighter configurations, it is going to be time to put them to the test. I 4-bet and make it $140 to go. If you noticed, my opponent folded face up before I even put the money in. They show ace queen offsuit. Can you imagine a hand as strong as this folding to a 4-bet? If they are folding this, then there is not much hands they are continuing with, right? This is the power of 4-bet bluffing. You are able to put your opponent in extremely tough spots and not only make them fold worse, you sometimes make them fold better. Adding these moves are super important in becoming a better poker player. If you play ABC Poker and are too predictable, scan this QR code to join my free newsletter. You will become a better poker player without having to do much. You can also scan the link in my pinned comment to join. The next mistake is super significant and you need to make sure you are not doing it. If you are, then you may be losing a ton of extra money at the poker tables for no reason. You need to stop over bluffing. I will break this down when I get dealt pocket fives on the button in this 2-5 game. Hijack is going to open 4x to $20. Pocket pairs are really good hands in position, so I will put in a call and everyone else is going to fold. We go heads up to a flop of 5 queen deuce, 2 clubs. I cannot ask for a better flop having second best set. Villain finds a continuation bet for $25 and this time I will just be putting in a call. We go to the turn and it comes the 9 of hearts. This brings in another flush draw and villain finds the double barrel for $35. The problem with this is the bet is super small. Now I can not only call and I need to start building up this pot. I am going to raise in position all the way up to $125. My opponent calls. We go to the river and it comes the 8 of spades. After a couple of seconds, villain donk bets and leads for $200. This is a little more than half of the pot. Flushes did not complete, but unfortunately straight draws did complete. There are not that many of them, but I do have to respect this lead here. If my opponent checked, I would have no issue putting in the bet myself. Donks are very strong in poker, so always be extremely careful and proceed with caution. I decide to just call. Villain turns over ace-3 of clubs for the bluff since they missed their flush and straight draw from the flop. They figured it would be impossible to win at showdown, which is right against my set, but this is not a reason to just fire out random bets and bluff. There is not many times in poker you get to bluff a missed ace-high flush draw, and you sure shouldn't do it by donk betting. They were afraid to check fold and it cost them $200. Learning when to bluff is crucial and you should watch this next video to learn 4 strategies good poker players always do to win more money.